This is a Fox News alert on a show of defiance from Iran as it holds a massive military exercise. The drill coming just one day after President Trump slapped new sanctions on the country for a recent missile test. State media saying Tehran testing missile and radar systems as well as cyber warfare programs.
Right, and there's great concern about this because, as you mentioned, it comes just a day after the U.S. leveled those sanctions against Iran. And adding to just the overall concern, the rhetoric coming out of Iran's military, one Revolutionary Guard Brigadier General Kelly said that, quote, any misstep from Iran's enemies will result in its missiles roaring down on their heads. Clearly, tough talk aimed at the U.S. and, of course, President Trump. Now, as you mentioned, Kelly, today Iran's Revolutionary Guard's aerospace unit tested its missile and radar systems, cyber warfare systems, and command and control centers, again, a day after the Trump administration imposed sanctions on Iran because of the ballistic missile test that was carried out on Sunday. And President Trump, as we know, tweeted Friday that Iran is playing with fire. Well, today, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis said that Iran's conduct will have to be addressed. U.S. officials have indicated that more actions could follow. We don't have specifics, so we're waiting on that. But the secretary also said that Iran is the single biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Still, he said that despite the recent tension with Iran, he doesn't think it warrants an increase in the number of U.S. forces in the Middle East. And Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, is trying to put a more diplomatic face on this, saying that his country will never initiate a war or use its weapons against anyone unless it's in self-defense. But other Iranian leaders are taking a more proactive tone. In fact, the senior Iranian cleric, Ayatollah Khatami, told his followers yesterday, quote, our missile drills are a show of might. We are living in a world of wolves, wolves such as the arrogant government of America. And then his followers, thousands of them, Kelly, chanted in unison, death to America.
They're coming back to America. People from 7 predominantly Muslim countries who had been banned from traveling here. Immigration supporters celebrated in major cities today while the president lamented on Twitter. What is our country coming to when a judge can halt a Homeland Security travel ban and anyone, even with bad intentions, can come into the U.S.?
I find that the court should and will grant the temporary restraining order.
Those words lifted President Trump's travel restrictions on people from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. The ruling came in response to a lawsuit filed by Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson.
The law is a powerful thing. It has the ability to hold everybody accountable to it, and that includes the President of the United States.
The judge said it was this argument from the state solicitor general that convinced him the executive order may be unconstitutional.
Our claim about refugees is primarily that it is religiously motivated discrimination, and that the order is in large part motivated by religious animus.
President Trump criticized the judge and the ruling on Twitter. The opinion of this so-called judge, which essentially takes law enforcement away from our country, is ridiculous and will be overturned. The White House argues the order is intended to protect the homeland. The Department of Justice is expected to file an emergency petition to allow the federal government to resume enforcement of travel restrictions.
This TRO is granted on a nationwide basis.
Just hours before the judge's ruling, President Trump defended the travel restrictions in a weekly address.
The executive order establishes a process to develop new vetting and mechanisms to ensure those coming into America love and support our people, that they have good intentions.
But after the judge's order, it's back to business as usual for now.
We are going to dump Trump.
Senator Chuck Schumer was among the speakers today celebrating the ruling outside the Stonewall Inn. So was former Council Speaker Christine Quinn.
We will beat them and we will win as long as we stay together.
Syrian refugees could start arriving in the country again as soon as Monday. A State Department email says trips are being booked through February 17th.
To the United Kingdom now, where Muslim organizations have gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in London to protest U.S. President Donald Trump's entry ban on people from 7 Muslim-majority countries. Protesters say they will march from the embassy in Grosvenor Square to Downing Street. Meanwhile, Air France has reopened its U.S.-bound flights to passengers affected by the executive order. Qatar Airways has also said it will fly passengers to the U.S. after a Seattle judge temporarily suspended the controversial ban. A travel alert posted on the Doha-based airline's website said the carrier would comply with the new orders as long as passengers had a valid visa.
On Saturday, German weekly magazine Der Spiegel sparked controversy at home and abroad with a front cover illustration. The illustration imagines U.S. President Donald Trump beheading the Statue of Liberty. Carrying the caption "America First," it depicts a cartoon figure of Trump with a bloody knife in one hand and the statue's head dripping with blood in the other. Adel Rodriguez, the artist who designed the cover, is a Cuban who came to the United States in 1980 as a political refugee. He told the Washington Post, "It's a beheading of democracy, a beheading of a sacred symbol." The cover set off a debate on Twitter and in German and international media. Alexander Graf Lambsdorff, a member of Germany's Free Democrats and vice president of the European Parliament, describing it as tasteless.
Well, it turns out that one of the most potent symbols of American freedom began life as a Muslim woman. That's according to researchers who say that the Statue of Liberty was originally intended to represent an Egyptian peasant. The sculptor, Frederic Auguste Barthold of France, planned for his work to guard the entrance to the Suez Canal. But when he was unable to sell his idea to Egypt, Bartholdi journeyed to America with his drawings of a Muslim woman in Arab peasant garb and transformed her into a Roman goddess of liberty.
Meanwhile, an American congresswoman has dubbed Wednesday's protests at the University of Berkeley, which turned violent, quote, a beautiful sight.
We have seen demonstrations, and I think we've already talked about that around the country. Young people at Berkeley protesting against this unconstitutional order. And so as we encourage our young people to get involved, I thought it was a beautiful sight.
Now, multi-faith groups in Canada have formed protective human shields around mosques in the wake of deadly gun attack on an Islamic center in Quebec last week. Activists formed rings of peace at midday Friday prayers. Coordinated actions were taken in Toronto, Edmonton, and St. John's. Activists said that they sought to show their outrage against anti-Muslim hate crimes. A student behind the Sunday attack in Quebec has been described as pro-Trump, anti-immigration, and pro-far right. On Friday, thousands gathered in Quebec for the funeral of the last of the 6 victims of Sunday's shooting. Pardon me. An earlier funeral in Montreal was attended by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, whose government has denounced the act as an act of terror.
The violence that plagued Chicago last year has carried into this one. January ended with 51 murders and 299 people shot. Both are up from January 2016. This past week, the police department rolled out new strategies to solve the problem.
Just 2 out of the 25 police districts here account for almost a quarter of all shootings in the city. Gang-infested areas that have defied solution for years. But those districts are getting some much-needed assistance. A just-introduced technology called ShotSpotter can now home in on the location of gunfire.
918 West 60th Street, 10 shots.
While simultaneously, a second computer system turns on the largest network of surveillance cameras in the country to help locate and search for suspects and victims. Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson says it's better than 911.
This technology gives us real-time information. It pinpoints where the shot comes from, and we have a 5 to 7 minute advantage in terms of responding to it a lot quicker than we did before.
The information is available not only here, but also in the vehicles, on these mobile computers, and also literally in the hands of the officers on smartphones.
We spoke to Jonathan Lewin, a deputy chief of police at one of 2 strategic decision support centers. Since the new technology came online this week, police have said it's already led to shooting arrests. But its long-range impact on the bloodshed remains to be seen.
Are you hoping this works? Are you confident it's going to work, or what?
I'm confident that with the technology and with the process and with the people, it's going to work.
Security is ramped up in Houston in advance of the game. But this year, things look different at America's biggest sporting event.
Alex, good morning to you. Yeah, pretty striking to see the difference compared to last year. In San Francisco last year, there were police on nearly every corner, it seemed, in combat fatigues, with assault rifles. This year, Houston police made the conscious decision to change that approach, which doesn't mean that security isn't there.
We have about 100 seats that bring in public safety, law enforcement, fire, and transportation partners under one roof.
Inside the Harris County Emergency Management Center, Francisco Sanchez showed us where 60 local, state, and federal agencies coordinate behind the scenes.
You will see a very heavy law enforcement presence, but you should also know there will be law enforcement that you won't see.
On the street, Houston police, the lead agency, are giving the public a different look. Less obvious presence, more hidden help. Helicopters are still a near constant presence in the sky, but on the ground, you do not see lines of combat fatigues and assault rifles. This is also a no-drone zone. Security has changed because technology and Houston have too. 13 years ago, the last time Houston hosted, there was only a small light rail system. That has been expanded dramatically, stretching Houston out, forcing police to cover more ground. Tom Lambert, CEO of Harris County Metro, says 800 volunteers have been deployed.
So they're going to be placed where, and their goal is to do what?
They're additional eyes and ears. If they see something that is not in line with how we normally operate, to make sure that they're notifying it to the Metro Police, and we'll coordinate that with the Houston Police and all of our other partners.
It's also a longer event. The security plan this time covers 10 days, not 4. And it means paying attention to cameras and what's happening online more than ever before.
To the Ukrainian city of Donetsk, where locals are clearing the damage caused by days of shelling. And while last night was relatively calm, they fear that any moment could bring a brand new round of escalation. Right there in the region is Murat Gazdiev.
The sort of bombardment and shelling that we saw in Donetsk has not been seen here since 2016. You could literally feel explosions through vibrations and through the tremors they cause every few seconds throughout the city. It was mostly the northwestern parts, the northwestern districts that were targeted, but you had sporadic explosions, blasts everywhere.
Дом весь разбило, смотри. Как я не осталась здесь ночевать, а тут это же моя вся постелька, тут лежит все мое. Я ж тут жила.
President Trump vowed to restore peace along the border with Russia. In a statement from the White House issued on Saturday, Trump said, "We will work with Ukraine, Russia, and all other parties involved to help them restore peace along the border." Violence has flared between Moscow rebels and the Ukraine government, causing high casualty rates. President Trump reached out to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko to state that the United States will work to restore peace along the border with Russia. The vacation is over for the Obama family after a 2-week escape to Palm Springs and the British Virgin Islands. Barack and Michelle are back in D.C., where they will begin to put together plans to settle into the post-White House life. While most U.S. presidents depart Washington after their term, the family is opting to stay in town while Sasha Obama finishes up high school. As of now, they've rented a lush 8,200-square-foot brick Tudor home in D.C.'s posh Colorama neighborhood. Their neighbors include a former congressman, a French ambassador, and the one and only First Lady Ivanka Trump. With a lot more time on his hands, Obama is expected to write a book and begin work on the Obama Foundation.
Now turning to France, where a strong storm has left hundreds of thousands of homes without power in France. According to the National Electricity Grid, gale force winds in the southwestern Atlantic coast have affected more than 250,000 homes. 3 regions have been put on a red alert as winds reach speeds of nearly 150 kilometers an hour. Forecasters say the winds are expected to die down later in the day.
In the shadow of the Cathedral Mountains, this is Pasu, named after a glacier that cuts through the high road to China. Rising temperatures have already led to a faster meltdown and surging, are leading to the loss of valuable land used for growing crops. For Amanullah and his family, the rich deposit along the riverbank has provided fertile soil for fruit and vegetables and grazing for livestock. But the land is eroding fast. The whole village has been moved to another area to avoid the floods that are becoming more common. Urgent steps need to be taken now. One of the priorities is education, creating a better awareness of what is seen as a major crisis in the making.
A new study predicts that wild pigs could soon become a major problem in the U.S. from coast to coast. The Journal of Applied Ecology reported this week that wild pig populations are steadily growing in the United States, and the animals could soon inhabit most of the U.S. in 3 to 5 decades. Now, while wild pigs are mostly concentrated in the southern half of the U.S., more than 6 million pigs currently exist across 35 states. The report estimates wild pigs cause more than $1.5 billion in damage to farmland and public property each year. The pigs are descendants of the first swine that were brought to the United States by the Spanish in 1539. In 2014, the United States Congress appropriated $20 million to create a damage management program for the increasingly problematic pigs.
Picture an old-time jukebox, silent, just waiting. You put in a quarter, then hit play.
Well, I've been doing this for about more than a month.
Not unlike asking a question of Aiden Knaus.
Usually just at the summer I always sit home, and I'll hang out with my friends a lot.
Aiden is 13 and an 8th grader at Sartell Middle School.
Awesome.
But these aren't the school halls he's walking while talking.
My mom works here.
Rather, the St. Cloud VA Medical Center.
Pretty much me, I talk.
Where Aiden
There we go.
is not one
We are good.
to just talk the talk.
I walk like 10 miles a day.
As a VA volunteer escort,
It's a bit cloudy, and I think it's going to start raining soon, actually.
Aiden's gift
It's always get pretty warm.
has not gone unnoticed.
In all the years, and I've been here at the VA for 10 years plus, I've never came across a student like you.
I always try to make them feel good, I don't want to just push them and just be quiet.
Navy vet Mary Klazowski
It's pretty cool.
also shares these halls
I was born and raised on a farm.
as a VA housekeeper.
Same thing as my grandma and grandpa.
Everybody, they want Aiden, but Aiden's never available because everybody wants him.
Nice.
One day after turning 13,
We'll take you to the handicap door.
first time he was old enough to volunteer,
Yeah.
Aiden started bringing vets to therapy, the canteen, and chapel.
Have a nice day, sir.
And then they started bringing him something
I just like to talk.
unexpected.
I didn't know that he could thrive in something like this, and that's what I think he's doing. He's thriving.
Tanya Hundeby is Aiden's mom.
School's been hard for him.
School often is.
I do everything fast.
For kids diagnosed with memory lapses, attention deficit, and high-functioning autism.
I couldn't really talk when I was little. I couldn't talk till I was 3 years old.
I worried a lot.
Tanya started teaching her son sign language, unsure he would ever talk.
It's kind of hard to get a good spot to sit on these chairs.
But as the other volunteers can attest,
I didn't think you were actually 80.
silence is no longer an Aiden issue.
I just did not think that.
That's nice to hear. Because he can talk.
Did you play any sports when you were a kid?
He loves meeting new people and having conversations.
Oh, really?
Learning about people's lives.
Well, what'd you do in the Air Force?
And as Aiden has talked with vets like World War II Airman Donald Zitter, he's also learned some words are best left
You don't want to remember that stuff.
unspoken.
You keep it to yourself. You don't want to talk about it. It's totally fine.
He's very special to me.
After 16 days in rehab with a broken hip,
It blew me away.
Navy vet Jay LaCrosse is finally back driving his work truck.
Trust me.
Yet still thinking about the day
I got skills.
he noticed Aiden pushing him more slowly.
And that's when I said, Aiden, did you get in a little fender bender? And he said, no. He said, I just realized if I went slower that you and I would have more time to talk. And that was the first time that, he just, it hit me so hard, how special this kid was.
We're all set up now.
And as for that mom,
Take it straight to KT.
who used to worry
He's perfect just the way he is. Very proud of him.
My grandma's the manager.
We've all been told that talk is cheap.
Yeah.
But for those who served our country,
Right over here.
Aiden Knaus
Use the turn signal.
delivers.
Oh, you want to go outside?